Welcome, and thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be exploring history. That is, the history of what it might be like in time when we begin to live on the moon. And the question is, why? Is it just a simplification of overpopulation on the Earth and the possibility that we can expand our regions, or is there more to it? Exploring the 22nd century, our guest today, with his newest book, Crescent, explores that possibility and what that's going to look like in the 22nd century. His book is Crescent. It's a Helium-3 novel. He's also author of the book Rocket Boys, which became October Sky. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Homer Hickman. Homer, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Well, hi, Daniel. How are you?
Doing well. Now, fascinating little novel here. I understand, what is the reason that we're kind of space racing to the moon? Is it to settle it, or is there more to it than that?
Well, I've always felt that a reason to have people on the moon is for economic reasons. The moon is, in effect, Earth's eighth continent. We believe that it was calved off the Earth some several billion years ago by a Mars-sized planet that struck the Earth, which had already started to cool and form itself, but then it had this cataclysmic event, and basically took a big chunk of our Earth and put it into orbit around us. And thank goodness for it, because it has created such activities on the Earth as our ocean's tides, which have helped life to develop. But the Earth is filled with the moon has plenty of minerals that the Earth will want to eventually go after, including Helium-3. Helium-3 is an isotope from the solar wind that covers the moon, and for those scientists who work in the arena of fusion reaction, it turns out that Helium-3 is the perfect fuel for some futuristic fusion reactors, which eventually I think will be the big mass energy drivers on the Earth.
Now, I hear a lot about the Helium-3. Tell us more about that. What did they discover this as an energy source? What's that all about?
Well, it was kind of cool. After the Apollo astronauts brought back all of the moon rocks, the scientists who were studying them naturally wanted to see what they were made of, and it was interesting, of course. But in order to do that, they had to whisk the dust off of these rocks, and eventually they got around to looking at the dust itself, and they found in there, embedded in a rather amazingly huge quantities, an isotope called Helium-3. It's basically a mildly unstable helium atom that just aches to react with another helium atom. And it turns out that when the time comes to build fusion reactors, and that is a device that always seems to be about 10 years away, and I think it's mainly because we don't really need it. We have plenty of energy resources right now. But eventually we will need it. We will want to go to the moon, gather up this Helium-3 in terms of, we'll have to mine it, just like strip mining on Earth, and it'll be a gas. We'll compress it and return it to Earth to operate our fusion reactors. Fusion reaction is a very, very clean energy source, and its byproduct basically is just heated water. And so it will be something we'll want to go after eventually, and I think the moon will be the place to go. And I'm predicting that'll be around in the 22nd century.
Now, I understand China's become very interested in this particular race as well.
Well, we will see. Of course, the Chinese say that eventually they plan on putting humans on the moon. We don't really know their purpose for that. The Apollo program was fairly straightforward. We wanted to put people on the moon to demonstrate our technological prowess vis-a-vis the Russians, and once we had done that, we withdrew from the moon. But it was very difficult technologically to do it. I think the Chinese will find that we made it look a lot easier than it really was when their time to do it. But I don't think they're going up there right now for economic reasons. They would do the same thing to demonstrate that they are a great power. I would hope that the rest of us will go back and take people there when the time comes for us basically to carve out economic zones on the moon and start developing it.
Now, what's fascinating about the book Crescent is, we have an established colony up there, and this is a colony specifically for mining this Helium-3. And so creating what that world looks like and how it operates is quite fascinating in and of itself. But you actually grew up in a mining town, so you were able to kind of put that in there without, having to guess what that looks like. Tell us about that.
Yeah, a lot of people say that Moontown, which is the name of the mining town where Crater and then Crescent live, is sort of Colwood, West Virginia on the moon. And Colwood, West Virginia is where I grew up. It was a company town, which meant that everything in the town was owned by the company. Every house, every store, every street, even the churches were owned by the company. Everybody lived in the town, worked for the company, and that's the way I see the moon developing. Essentially, what I posit is that the 22nd century moon will look a lot like early 20th century United States, where we had folks like the Rockefellers and some of the Vanderbilts and such, basically carving out economic spheres of influence, creating company towns, putting lots and lots of people to work, and that's what I see for the moon in the future. It will be the same thing. It won't be countries that will be running things up there, but entrepreneurs who basically risk everything to create these company towns, to mine the Helium-3 and other products such as thorium and titanium and molybdenum and all kinds of rare earth materials, and establish a way to economically ship it back to Earth and gather up money that way.
And with all types of industry, there's the hierarchy and also sometimes the inner fighting that goes on, especially with the colonel, then his son, and then, of course, the daughter. There seems to be a real rift there, and even though they kind of run things.
Well, they do. The colonel is very much like the superintendent of the mine there in Colwood. He controls everything and likes to control everything, and his granddaughter is kind of the heir apparent to his fortune and his towns and everything else that he's developing on the moon. And the people who come to work on the moon are an interesting lot that I write about. Crater was the first novel in this series, and Crescent is the second. But we get to meet a lot of the people that live in these mining towns, and they're basically people who have run from the Earth for a variety of different reasons. In some cases, they're outlaws. The owners of these mines don't care what they did on Earth as long as they come up and keep their nose clean and work hard for them. Or they're trying to escape the 22nd century version of the IRS or spouses. And there's also people who are religious, who very much like the pilgrims of our history here in this country, and also the Mormons. They have come to escape the Earth, where their religions are restricted or put down in some way, and try to establish themselves and their religion and raise their children the way they want to.
And what's interesting about that too, Homer, as you write in the book, is that once you punch in the clock, you're on company time. You're part of the company. Pretty much the company owns you. So the laws that are on Earth don't apply. Legal speak that is on Earth doesn't apply here. It's pretty straightforward.
Well, it is. I mean, if you try to, for instance, Crescent is accused of murder, and the colonel basically doesn't care whether she actually did it or not, and because he wants to get rid of her. Crescent, by the way, is a bioengineered warrior who have been sent from Earth to wage war on the mine owners, and she's been captured by Crater, the Crater Trueblood. And Crater has a soft heart, really, and he's brought Crescent back and trying to rehabilitate her. And the colonel wants no part of it. He just wants to kill her. And when there is a murder there in Moontown, he blames her for it. And so when Crater tries to speak legalese to him about the rules of evidence and all that, he's quickly shut down and said that does not apply here. We don't. Lawyer talk is not allowed. Guilty, innocent, doesn't really matter. We don't want her here. And so he has to deal with that, and ultimately he and Crescent end up taking off and becoming outlaws on the moon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but interestingly enough, though, the colonel seems to kind of concede a little bit and allow him at least 1 week to come up with the evidence that might exonerate Crescent. That's the interesting part, but there's the twist that you put in there, especially when it comes to life, is that there are those of us who might be on that path to, like in Crater's case, the colonel's basically giving him carte blanche to develop his, I believe it's an evaporator that is able to create pools of water or moisture. And, you get a raise, you get advancement and all this, and then all of a sudden here this Crescent character, which is a crowhopper, as you mentioned, who's really bioengineered to destroy humans. He captures her rather than just shooting her on the spot when they had hijacked a convoy. And now all of a sudden he's kind of turning a life that was just given to him around, and as you said, he becomes an outlaw. So it's interesting how we'll sometimes make particular choices in life and not realize the impact until you're just caught up in the middle of it. You kind of wonder why Crater has such motivation, as I believe it was the colonel was saying. You're supposed to be a soldier. You're not supposed to be compassionate like that.
Yeah, Crater has a good heart.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't understand it, and the colonel certainly doesn't understand it, and it's what gets him in trouble. If Crater's heart was harder and basically would allow himself to be bent to the colonel's will, whatever it may be, then he would be a lot better off. But he just simply has this sensitivity about him, this sense of right and wrong. And, as far as the colonel is concerned, what's good for the colonel is good for the people, and he's sincere about this.
Mm-hmm.
He figures that the richer he gets, the richer the people that work for him get, and whatever it takes to make that happen, he's going to do it, no matter how you put that up morally. It doesn't really matter. Ultimately, the good for him and the people take precedent over any kind of moral consideration. And Crescent, as far as he's concerned, is a danger to his people, and a dangerous precedent to have somebody like this bioengineered warrior in their midst, and so he's determined to get rid of him. And Crater, for reasons that even he can't quite understand, has this sense that he needs to defend Crescent and take care of her.
Now, the thing that's, for our listeners, that they should know is Crescent is a bioengineered human warrior. I mean, they were basically made to do what she is to be an assassin, a killer. When you take a look at what's happening here on Earth, and I think what I always find fascinating about science fiction, even though I don't read a lot of it, is that they get to explore the possibilities. I know most people might be thinking of Star Trek as they hear this, and you take a look at, for instance, Star Trek in and of itself. For instance, when Jim Kirk would, Scotty, beam me aboard, well, look, we've got the cell phone now that looks just like that in some cases. And so it's like these novels or these stories, even though they may be set in a possible, in an imaginary area somewhere, that there's a lot of reality that they explore, especially when it comes to the technology. And one of those that I was interested in was the bioengineered computer that helped him hack so he understood what the old codes were. Tell us about bioengineered computers.
Well, I do think that is the next revolution in technology. Is going to be bioengineering, and one of the
well, it already is. Look at, we've got the GMOs, we've got the cloning of animals. I mean,
well, that's right.
Yeah, how much further do we really need to go here?
I don't think people think about it too much, and it's kind of hidden. We have this huge bio revolution going on, and most people just don't even realize what it is or that it's coming at them. I think one of the first places that it will happen is with a biocomputer, and it turns out when I started researching that it's just fascinating that slime mold, which sounds really nasty and really awful, turns out to be an animal, if you will. It's kind of in between an animal and a vegetable, but or a fungus-like. It's really in a class of its own. But anyway, it has some sort of innate intelligence. They put slime mold in mazes, and it's able to figure its way through it. They put the food out of reach. It actually grows temporary legs to reach up and grab the food. So with Crater, he has what's called a gilly, and a gilly is basically an extremely intelligent form of slime mold that's been developed that helps him along the way, and it basically just is either in his pocket or it sits on his shoulder. It's able to communicate with him, and it's the most special hacker. It can hack any computer. And it's one of the reasons why it's illegal. And Crater has one of the very few gillies left. All the rest of them were put in acid baths on Earth because they were just such terrible snoops and would hack any kind of computer. So the gilly is one of the favorite characters. People read the Helium 3 novels. They love the gilly, which should be helpful, but it's turned out to be a little bit nefarious. The other bioengineered creatures that Crater runs into, of course, is Crescent and the Crowhoppers, these bioengineered warriors. One of the bioengineered humans that Crater meets that I think may be absolutely coming in the future is a low intelligent human who is called Helper. The helpers, and they are essentially born with a lower IQ and trained to want to help. In other words, it would be well, we've had a lot of trouble actually building robots that work, but why build a robot when all you have to do is to train a human to do the work of a robot, to take care of your elderly parents, to look after your children, take them to school and this kind of thing. So I think that these helpers will be a great moral dilemma in the future because essentially they will be slaves.
You know, when you take a look at bioengineering, there is cause for concern about this. And for instance, just some months ago when Angelina Jolie was out there talking about potential that she had this particular gene that could lead to breast cancer and spouting off about that. A lot of people, I don't think they understood what was really going on beneath the surface, but it got caught. And that is that particular gene was being identified to be patented, was what was interesting. And I'm sure that you've researched into this.
Oh, yeah.
So when you look into bioengineering, and people don't understand, but then, and even so, the judge ruled against the patent for that gene, as he should, because it was something that was found in nature. But you just imagine in bioengineering the possibilities that people think, well, gee whiz, they can bioengineer perhaps, another human heart or lungs, whatever the case is, and that saves lives. But they don't look at the implications when it's bioengineered, it's patentable.
Oh, yeah.
That gets into a big, ugly truth. Talk a little bit about that.
Strains of wheat and rice.
Right.
I was just out in Montana recently. I'm an avid amateur paleontologist. I was out on a ranch looking for dinosaur bones and talking to the rancher out there, and they have seeds that they buy from a manufacturer that are patented. It will grow one crop. It's resistant to disease and insects and that kind of thing. They are not allowed to take the seeds from that grain that they create. They basically have to buy new every year. So that's the start. And so that's in plants. It's already happened. And I think that we will see it happen in terms of animal genes in the future, and probably ultimately humans. If it can be done, it probably will be done. It may not be done here in the United States or Canada or the UK, but there will be countries that just will see a way of creating a different type of human that they need, that will help them in their society, and they will not have any kind of moral hang-ups on doing that.
Mm-hmm. Hey, like I said, it's all fascinating because you consider the fact that, when you look at science fiction, people go, well, it's fiction, but these novels just like yours, they explore that not only are these possible, but they're actually happening, and sometimes they'll dig up things that, no, that couldn't be happening now, but it is.
Yeah, it is very much. But like I say, it's kind of an underground revolution. It's going on. People hear little pieces of it about they have the fruit in their supermarket. The DNA has been tweaked a little bit to cause it to stay fresher longer. They just hear a little bit about it. They then don't think too much about it. Again, I believe that when all of this lamps over into the realm of animals and humans, it's going to be a really big moral dilemma for a lot of folks on what do we do when you actually have a human standing there in front of you and says, I just want to help you. I'm here to help you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yes, and we can let you have this human for this amount of money, and we can actually give you terms on it. You can borrow money to own it. You will own it for the rest of its life and your life, and it will help you in everything. Now look at your elderly parents. They need somebody to help them, right? And it's going to be very, very tempting you can't dispose of this person that's standing in front of you, and they keep saying, I want to help, I live to help you. They would not be happy if they couldn't help you. So what do you do? That will be the great moral dilemma. And ultimately, if you peel that back far enough, you essentially would be buying a slave.
Mm-hmm. Now, Homer, tell me, with the things that you explore in your novels, and of course the research that you have to do behind, making these things a reality in your novels, what is some of the biggest concerns you see based on what you've explored that we should be aware of?
Well, I think that it's clear to me that here in the United States we've kind of turned our back on the idea of having people in space. We have no way of actually putting our astronauts into space anymore. I think the federal government has essentially decided that in terms of national imperatives and national importance, that human spaceflight is very, very, very low on the list. You can just look at the federal budget and see that. So we might be in a situation where other countries who do see a future in space, who do see an economic imperative to go into space, will vault ahead of us and leave us sort of in the trash bin of history, like Portugal and Spain, who didn't really understand what the new worlds were all about. So I do worry about that. On the other hand, I've talked to a lot of young people, and it seems to me that they can hardly wait until we baby boomers shuffle off the stage. I think that they have. I mean, it's true. I think we carry with us a lot of old ideas and a lot of old concepts that a lot of these young people, they grew up with people being in space, and the whole idea of living in space is nothing new to them or strange or funny. We have a lot of people in this country and around the world who actually think people in space and living on the moon is funny, and they will make jokes about it. I think that a lot of young people, and I hope they're the ones that are going to end up in charge, they don't think it's funny at all. Mm-hmm. But somehow we have to encourage these young folks, and I do worry in this country that we end up calling them names. We call them nerds and geeks and all that kind of thing, and we cause them to kind of withdraw from society and not lead our society like I think they should.
What's even more interesting, Homer, is when you take a look at the cell phone and how it's evolved, and the fact is you hardly see people actually talk on the phone anymore. They're texting. And I was watching two teenage boys who were literally standing side by side texting each other, and I thought, geez, look, binaries. They've gotten to the point where they just do it like that, and it's becoming code now. It's just, I keep thinking of the late philosopher Alan Watts, who in one of his books talked about there'll be a point where we'll all just be one energetic pulse. And you take a look at how things are now, and there it is.
Well, I don't like that. I don't like that part of the kind of the new way that young people communicate, because and it's not all of them, but it is quite a few, including most of my nieces and nephews, who don't look me in the eye, who are very uncomfortable talking to any grown-up, and basically just want to sit there and fiddle with their cell phones and iPhones and all that kind of stuff, and rather than actually engage in a verbal conversation where ideas can be tossed out and worked on and so on. It just seems to me like that it's one of the reasons why they won't be leaders in the future, is because they lack the means to communicate verbally, and that includes writing, and therefore their ideas maybe are not totally fleshed out simply by human interaction. So I would like to see that kind of turned around. I understand, though, that it's really cool to have these gadgets and play with them. I have I have them too. I'm not a big texter. I would rather just talk to you or write something that you can read that is more fleshed out than you can possibly do texting back and forth. But that's one of the reasons why they can't wait to see me and my generation shuffle off stage. We're different. Yeah. We have a lot of old concepts that we think are absolutely, totally, utterly correct, and the young folks just don't see it that way.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting how things are changing. I'm reminded of a movie, Indian Summer, starring Alan Arkin, and he brings up what he calls the campers from the Golden Age. And it's this group of, they're now adults, that used to go out to this summer camp, a real summer camp that actually exists, by the way. And they were asking him, so what are you giving it up after something like 40 years of doing this, of running this camp? And he says, the kids today, they come up here and they're wearing these headsets, and anybody that has to bring these up into the woods, I just can't connect. I can't understand them anymore, And I thought how true that was. I remember even taking some kids out just for a walk in the woods, and they just shuffled through the whole thing like, can we just get this over with and get back into town so I can play with my cell phone again? And I thought, my goodness, is this really what it's all coming to? So I understand exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading a book right now about some climbers on Mount Everest, and the first thing that they worried about was setting up their blogs, being able to transmit their blogs and get their email, and so they spend like, a week.
I think they need a ghillie.
Trying to get the internet going, and right. Then rather than look at Mount Everest, they basically look at their computer. And the writer actually is complaining about that everybody is just engrossed in their blogs and their emails and so on, and not actually getting out and looking at where they are and kind of absorbing that. And I find that a lot too. I mean, when I've gone to on vacation and go over to Europe and so on, I'm the same way. I kind of want to get the internet up and running. And that after a while, I have an experience of pre-internet life, and so I go, wait a minute, I'm not really enjoying myself. So I'm going to turn this daggone thing off, and I'm going to look around me, and I'm just going to absorb where I am. But a lot of young people, I don't know if they will ever experience real life because they're just so totally absorbed in these little machines.
Absolutely. It's amazing how technology seems to be running us rather than we're using technology to run our lives. So the book is Crescent. Our guest today, Homer Hickman. Homer, is there a website people can find out more?
They absolutely can. It's they can go over to homerhickam.com. It's Homer, and then Hickam is HICKAM. .com, and we've got lots of information there on all my books, including, of course, the ever-popular Rocket Boys / October Sky.
Homer, thank you so much for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. Fascinating discussion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in as well. Pick up a copy of Crescent. Find out more about the exploratory ways that might be happening as we mine on the moon. Also explore on the internet, beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We do have a free weekly e-news update that you can sign up for as well. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Daniel Davis. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.